has something extraordinary to offer the group.
Did you know LA Times called her Gen Z Sherlock Holmes?
At the End of the World is a murder thriller series that premiered in November of 2023 on FX. Also streams on Hulu the next day. It has 7 episodes, each about 60 minutes apiece. Now, this actually stars Emma Corrin as Darby Hart, Britt Marling as Lee, and Harris Dickinson as Bill Farah. Also, another notable name for me in this one is Clive Owens as Andy. Now, the story on IMDb refers to it this way. In Retreat, which puts a new spin in a classic whodunit, Darby and 11 other guests are invited by a reclusive billionaire to participate in a retreat at a remote and dazzling location. When one of the other guests is found dead, Darby must fight to prove it was murder against a tide of competing interests. So when I read that synopsis and I know what the genre is, I'm going to tell you I'm all in for mysteries. And when they have like an ensemble cast and it's like in like secluded spots where they can kind of be spooky or creepy, it just goes and actually kicks up the thriller level for me up a notch. So I am the target audience for this type of series. And the reason why I want you to know that perspective is I think you should always know the perspective of your reviewer when you're trying to make your selection of choice of things to go ahead and actually view. Now, for me, I watched the first 2 episodes of brand new streaming content on the streaming platforms. I watch so you don't have. If you like how that sounds, do me a favor, click like, share, subscribe. But now, let me go ahead and actually dive a little bit deeper into A Murder at the End of the World. Before I watch 2 episodes of any new series, I go ahead and actually do pretty much what you probably do, and that is I watch a trailer, I go ahead and actually read up on it a little bit just to go ahead and actually see, hey, is this worth my time? So I've done that for this particular series, and I've got a list of expectations that I have for it. So the first and foremost is that I'm expecting that there's going to be clues dropped throughout this series for us to kind of play along, for us to kind of solve the mystery. So number one expectation for any of us main target audience members, I want a chance to solve it, and I expect that. Number two, I'm expecting good character development, enough so that I can go ahead and actually get a glimpse into these types of people's, their personalities, their lives, their motives, things like that, so that I can go ahead and actually start to flip on who I think has done it, who possibly has done it, who's X'd out, all that kind of good stuff. So there has to be, in order for a good mystery to really kind of go about, you have the scenes and the environment, and you got to have a good, compelling list of characters. And the last thing is probably something that we're not going to get in the first 2 episodes, and that is I expect a satisfying end, meaning that I don't want a twist so out there that there was never any hope of me solving for it. So that's an expectation that I have, but it's obviously something that we're probably not going to get in the first 2 episodes of a 7 episode series. If we do, there's probably a problem with the writing or something else is happening here. So those are my expectations that I have before I go and actually watch this. Let me go ahead and actually watch these first 2 episodes, and then I'll go and give you my vibe and let you know what they're about. All right, so watch the first 2 episodes of this series, and my initial vibe of if I compare this series to anything out there, it's very much in the realm of a murder mystery like Glass Onion or Murder on the Orient. You know, ensemble cast, a whole bunch of characters, all that kind of good stuff. So it's following the typical process that we have with murder mysteries, but a little bit of a deeper dive for you folks that are fans of Law and Order: Criminal Intent. The main character, Darby, in this series very much reminds me of, if you remember this character from Law and Order: Criminal Intent. I think it's almost like a reimagining of the same character with the backstory and all that kind of good stuff. If you know anything about this particular character in Law and Order: Criminal Intent, this character is spot on type of character or takeoff of this one. So that's my initial thought process of if I went ahead and actually did an amalgam of all the different content that's out there. But now, let me give you some of my quick hits as far as what I actually noticed in those first couple episodes, and then kind of give you a rundown of, grading everything out. So in the first episode, I'm looking at, there was a very good setup to characters, especially the main character, really kind of letting you know what this character's personality type is, what kind of motivates them, and that type of good thing. I really like that. There's also a good sense of like the environment and the tech involved. And the reason why I say that is because I think the environment of where they're going to be at is obviously a big thing. And then also the technology that's involved to make this more of a modern day whodunit is very key to this. And I think they did a good setup for that. The first episode is slow paced to me. They're definitely slow walking it, taking you through the various different characters and whatnot. And so I like it, but you have to be prepared that there's not going to be a whole lot of excitement in this first episode. And then that first episode ends on the murder in question, and we're kind of off, and it kind of springboards you into the second episode. The second episode, we get a lot more backstory for our main character, and we get a little bit more backstory on the rest of the guests at the party as well. We start to kind of show the dangers of the environment and the guests, as far as what are their motivations, what are things that they could possibly be looking out for, and things like that. So we get that a little bit of a setup, and more so, we also get how the main character thinks and how she goes about trying to piece together things and whatnot. So those are kind of my initial thought processes for the first two episodes. Now, I want to go and actually kind of grade things out to kind of give you a little bit more deeper dive into this series. So the three things I always grade out are the storytelling. Storytelling for me is kind of like the pacing, the story, plausibility, that type of thing on there. Does the story make sense? How is it paced out? All that kind of good stuff. Second part is acting. I really want to go and actually, whether we're talking about individual performances or ensemble cast, dialogue, making you believe who they're portraying, and do they kind of draw you into the story. And then the last part I kind of give a grade on is just the intangibles, things that are just, you can't really quantify them. How things make you feel, going over my initial expectations, set design, environment, all that kind of good stuff. So that's the three things I kind of grade on, and then I kind of give a verdict on there. So let's start with that story. The best concept of this show is the combination of today's tech and information resources meeting with like an old school mystery. And what I mean by that is being able to use Google or Siri to get information, to access cameras and microphones and recordings and things of that nature, on top of just a a murder that you have a whole bunch of guests and you don't know the motivations. That is a very good premise, and it goes in and actually puts a lot of demand on making a compelling story. So definitely an intriguing aspect of the concept of there. Now, I'm not always a fan of kind of switching back and forth between flashbacks and like here and now or whatever, but it actually works for this particular series because it gives you a deeper mindset into motivations and understanding of the way that the main character Darby Hart thinks. And so for this particular series, I'm going to say that back and forth really does work here. For me, one of the things that just doesn't seem plausible is Darby's presence at this dinner. Now they do go and actually acknowledge and things like that. And I don't do any spoilers here, but for me, it's pretty weak in the reason why she's there. Now there may be something that we find out later in the series of like, this is why. Of course, somebody wouldn't actually invited her, or whatever. But for me, there's like a plot hole there that needs to go and actually get filled. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to have her there when you compare her to everybody else that's there. Just the way it goes about. Everything else for this story is set up pretty well. There's intrigue, there's plausibility to the majority of it happening, and the pacing's pretty decent on it. I'm gonna go and actually give the storytelling for this about a B plus. Okay. The acting in this series is above average. The main character is good and walks the line of being entertaining and being irritating. And I'm somewhat okay with that. Now, here's the probably the rub on this one is that she supposedly is supposed to be like this very intelligent person, and she comes off that way. But her character for me actually gets me more engaged when she's like examining a murder scene or examining, the environment or what have you. Her detective skills and her methods outside of the crime scene and things like that, mm, just does not feel particularly well thought out or well crafted. Again, hard to talk about this without spoiling, but I will just say that methods not so much a fan of in the way that they did this, and so this the actress, she actually does a pretty good job of trying to pull this off, but I believe that they wrote the character in such a way that um, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense of how she goes about coming about some information, as well as how she kind of blatantly she just does some things that makes no sense or what have you. But it's not necessarily on the actor because this is how it's set up, but it just kind of bugs me a little bit. Um, Now the rest of the cast is average to above average, depending upon the character, depending upon the scene or what have you. But overall, nothing took me out of the story, and most of it was actually pretty intriguing. And they did trying to draw your attention to some particular performances or what have you. Now, for me, Clive Owens as the billionaire Andy seems to hit the right notes of wealth and self importance. So he's brought in there. He's minimized, which is actually good because Clive Owens' character, his acting sometimes isn't great over a span of like a whole feature film, but in small bits, I think it works pretty well in here. So I like that. The dialogue works pretty well for me for most of the characters. It makes everything else more palatable, meaning that the lines don't seem like over the top or ridiculous or anything like that. And so I think they wrote pretty good lines for this particular series. So I'm going to give acting on here a B. Okay. Last aspect for to look at is kind of like the intangibles. What kind of things can I really put my finger on? But first and foremost, looking at my initial expectations, my first two are a hit. We get clues, starting to figure out some of the mystery and kind of dropping some jewels on them. We also start to learn about people's professions and agendas within the first two episodes. So we really start to build our suspect list and really trying to figure out who did what and why. And as I suspected, we're not going to get a resolution within the first two episodes, which is good because for this to be a murder mystery and go in 7 episodes, if you go ahead and actually we get a resolution in the second episode, I'd wonder what the heck the rest of the five are for. So nothing on that, but it did hit my first two expectations, and that's good. The setting for this was in Iceland, and it's a good isolation type of destination. And the other aspect of it with the AI, that's supposed to be an advanced AI type of thing on there. Isolation plus technology does go and actually create a sense of drama, tension, what have you, whatever. So I like that aspect of it. I think that was a good pairing. And the last aspect of it that I can't quite put my finger on it because I'm not an educated filmmaker or anything like that, but somehow the camera work doesn't seem up to par. I can't really go ahead and put my finger on it, but someone like there's just something quite not right about the camera work that I can't put my finger on. But it's not like it's horrible or anything like that, but just not something that it just kind of caught my eye. But overall, for the intangibles, because they're hitting some of my expectations, because I like the location, the setting, and the AI thing, all that kind of good stuff, I'm gonna go and actually give the intangibles for this series a B as well. Now, let's get into the verdict. Just to keep in mind, for my verdict levels, I'm either going to go and actually say binge the whole series, watch the first two episodes to get you a little bit of taste of it, watch one episode just to kind of figure out if you're going to like it, or completely skip it altogether. It's not worth your time. For main target audience members, people that are fans of mysteries, thrillers, that type of stuff, I'm going to say watch the first two episodes. The character setup for episode one draws in the personalities and it really kind of brings you into the whole environment. And then episode two shows a main audience member the environment and how the group reacts to the murder. And also with Darby's detective thought process, you'll be able to figure out within the first 2 episodes if this character driven murder mystery is for you or not as a main audience member. For casuals, people that are really not into mysteries, but are trying to figure out if this is something worth watching, I would say give it a 1 episode watch because the production is pretty good on this. The story is solid. And really, it kind of comes down with mystery content is it depends on if you like the characters and the setting. If you end up liking the characters or setting on here, you get everything in your first episode to kind of make that decision for here. You don't need to go and actually watch a second episode. You'll be able to figure out soon if this is your thing or not. But it's good enough production on there that you'll be entertained at least watching the first episode. So again, for main target audience members, I'm going to say watch the first 2 episodes. For casual viewers, I'm going to say give it a 1 episode watch. And that's what I have for A Murder at the End of the World, now showing on Hulu. Check it out.
To finding a way out.
You stayed for my entire review. I appreciate you. Do me a favor, click like if this was a decent enough review for you. Go ahead and subscribe if you want to hear more from me. And if you want to share my channel, if you want to go and actually watch some other videos that I made, go ahead and actually check them out right here. But until the next time, I'll holla at you. Take care of yourself.